In the previous video, we discussed customizing Jira for test management. Let us now discuss advanced workflow configurations. In this section, we are going to take a look at validators, conditions, and post functions. Let us now discuss validators. In this video, we are going to take a look at creating a transition screen to capture additional field from user during workflow transition. Michelle Williams requested us to create a new field called analysis when the test campaign is published. So whenever a user is publishing the test campaign issue type using the workflow transition, she wants to capture this new field. And she also wants that whenever the user is publishing the test campaign, the analysis field is filled in for sure. So we want this analysis field to be mandatory, but not in the whole project. We want to just make this field as a required field whenever the test campaign is published. So this is my project settings page where I can see here that we have these three workflows in the project. One is the Jira default workflow, one is for test campaign, and we have one more workflow for test case. If I click on the test campaign workflow, I can take a look at the current workflow diagram. So in this workflow, we want to capture something in the transition that is coming from in progress to published. So we want to insert a transition screen in between the in progress and published state. So we first need to create a screen that will contain the additional field that we want to capture from the user. So let us now go to the Jira administration and then go to the issues. We will first create a new custom field. So scroll down to the custom field section and quickly create a new field called analysis. So click on the button add custom field, select the type of the field. So in this case, we want to have a text field with multiple lines, and then select the next button. And click on the create button. And finally, we will create a new screen that will contain this field. So after you create the custom field, you need to also create a new screen for it. So there is a section here for creating screens. Click on it and press the button on top that says add a screen. Give your screen a nice name. And along with the nice name, you need to also make sure that you're using the description. And when you create a new screen, you need to then specify which field you want to capture. So this particular screen will contain just one field called analysis. So we now have a screen with a field called as analysis. So let us now go back to the test management project and let us modify the workflow. So when we go back to the project settings, we are now taken back to the test campaign workflow, and now there is a button on top that says edit. So we are now making a change in the workflow that already exists in the Jira instance. When you click on the button edit, you're now presented with the same workflow but in a draft mode. So you can actually change the workflow if you want. So click on the published transition. The name of the transition is published, which is coming from in progress and going to the published state. And when you click on this particular transition, there will be a new pop-up where you can do some further changes in the workflow. So when you click on the edit button on this pop-up window, you're now presented with the screen to modify the transition. So you can of course change the name of the transition if you want. You can also add a description, but there is one more section here called screen. It is nothing but a drop down with the list of all the screens that you have in the system. So we want to introduce the analysis field whenever you publish your test campaign. So simply select the screen name and save the transition. And finally, whenever you make a change in the workflow, you also need to make sure that you publish your workflow. So now our workflow is published. We have to now validate and verify whether this new change is working or not. So I'll go back to my project and I'll quickly create a new issue of type test campaign. So click on the button on top, create. Give your test campaign some nice summary and click on the button create. We have to also make sure that the campaign type field need to be filled in because we made this as a required field using field configuration. So when you have your test campaign created, quickly go through the workflow. So we have to first start the progress. Then we have to publish it. So if I click on the publish button now, I should be presented with this new transition screen where I can of course fill in my analysis and I can also add a comment. So whenever you add a new transition screen, you will be presented with comment field for you by default. And you can now fill in your analysis field. You can also add a comment and you can then publish your test campaign. However, user can skip filling the analysis field and they can simply click on the publish button. So we have a new transition screen, but user can skip over it. We need to now ensure that the analysis field is also filled in by the user. So there is one way by creating a field configuration to make this analysis field as a required field. However, whenever you're using the field configuration, the custom fields are required across your project. So if I make my analysis field as a required field, that field will become required in any test campaign or irrespective of the operation. So when you create a new test campaign, that field will be required, although we don't have the test campaign analysis field in the create operations screen. So we need to now add a new validator in the workflow. So if I go back to my workflow very quickly and take a look at the same workflow, and if I try to add a new validator, if I click on the edit button on top, so let me click on the transition, and if I click on the validator, I will be presented with a new section where I can add some validators to check the user input. So if I click on the add validator button for the same transition, I have some validators that are already there in the system called as permission validator, script validator, user permission validator, but these cannot be used for making a field as a required field. However, we can install one add-on to bring in more validators. So if you go to the Jira administration and then go to the add-on section, you can then install more add-ons in your Jira instance. So simply search for Jira MISC workflow and you will be presented with this add-on called Jira MISC workflow extensions. Simply click on the free trial to install this new add-on. So when you download a new add-on, you also need to generate a license from the marketplace. So when you generate a new license, you need to select your organization name and agree to the terms, and then the license will be applied to your instance. After installing the new add-on and also generating a new license for it, you will be taken back to your instance where you can see that your add-on is now installed, and you can of course go through the documentation of this add-on. So once you have this new add-on called Jira Misc Workflow Extensions installed on your system, go back to your project and let us modify the same workflow again to make the analysis field as a required field only during the workflow transition. So I'll modify the workflow again by clicking on the edit button on top, and I'll work on the published transition, then go again to the same validator option. Now in this screen, we have to now add a new validator. So click on the add validator button. And now you can notice here that we have a lot of different validators that came from installing the new add-on. And you can see here that we have different options to select from, but the field is required validator is something that will help us in making the analysis field as a required field. So let us add this new validator, and of course we need to select the field that will be checked during the transition. So the field is analysis field, and you can also enter some message. Please fill in the analysis and click on the add button. And finally, you need to publish your workflow. Don't forget to publish your workflow because the changes will not be applied. And if we now try to raise a new test campaign and then publish it, the analysis field should be required field. So let me now create a new test campaign. We also have to select the campaign type, which is a required field. But campaign type is a required field because of the field configuration. Now, if I go to the test campaign that I just raised, I can start the progress. I'll click on the in progress button. Then you have the option to publish it. So let us now publish it and take a look at the analysis field. You can see here very clearly that the analysis field is now a required field. There is an asterisk here, and if you try to publish your test campaign, let us see what happens. So we have this new error message also displayed for the user. Please fill in the analysis. So you can test it. When I fill in the information here, only then I can go to the next state, which is the published state.